This is the Relevant Podcast.
It's episode 1234, for real, episode 1234, and it's the Relevant Podcast. Here in Orlando, I'm your host, Cameron Strang, and joining me from Loverland, Virginia, is Jesse Carey.
Hello, hello.
From Nashville, our managing editor, downtown Emily Brown.
Hey, y'all.
And that's it. We are recording at a weird time, and listeners, you just missed a 7-minute rant of Jesse explaining to us why he is recording on tethered old school Apple headphones instead of AirPods because, you know, he forgot his mic. It was fascinating.
It's the most passionate I've ever seen Jesse, I will say.
I'm going to sum it up. I'm not going to do the whole rant again. They don't charge it. It makes no sense. They charge them in the same case, and
you're starting at the beginning of the rant. That was the first point you made.
They're two different. 80%, 10% doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And two, every time I would answer a phone call, it was a roll of the dice whether they'd be connected or I'd have an awkward. Hold on one sec. Well, I was over it. Here's the thing about the tethered ones. Mm-hmm. They're plugged in. They work, right? You're talking on headphones. I will say, though, there is one thing about the old school tethered, earbuds that especially the latest generation ones that are really fit into your ear snugly. It is like the equivalent. It is the tech equivalent of stepping on a Lego in the middle of the night. Is if you're walking, and in particular, like sometimes this will happen, like on a piece of like gym equipment or like on my desk or something. And when I get up, my phone's in my pocket. I got the earbuds in, and it gets caught on something and yanks out of your ear. There is no more unpleasant feeling than that. And
I would say childbirth, probably.
I don't know, man. I really got it. I really kind of yanked the lobe one day. So yeah, it's tomato on that. But it's bad.
No, I'm with you on the earbud in your ear. That's what, like, I have what looks like air traffic controller headphones on right now because I wear like the over the head ones. Yeah. Because I get like claustrophobic with them being in my ear. Like it freaks me out. It just feels too enclosed.
Okay, here. I'm glad you brought up the air traffic controllers, the over ears that you're wearing.
Because you've been waiting for a year and a half while I have this box on my head.
Yeah, it looks like you
look like if Princess Leia was an air traffic controller. That's what your profile looks like right now.
So princess.
She's in the lab just making beats. That's what it looks. No, I was thinking about this the other day. I was watching. It was a football game on CBS. And they cut to the guys in the booth. And they got the Blazers on with the CBS logo, the broadcast style. Mm-hmm. But everything else looks sharp, right? Or even with the ones where they just wear like really nice suits. Tom Brady last night or on during the Super Bowl when he called the game, he's wearing like a $700,000 watch. These guys are dressed to the nines. The production value for NFL games, football games, everyone knows, very high. Yet the broadcasters wear the biggest headphones you've ever seen in your life that go over their head. And they got that little stem with a black gumball on it for the microphone. Okay. Yeah. What you're telling me we can't put a lav mic on those guys or put some in-ears? Why do they have the headphones with the attached?
It's open air booth. Not all of them are. Most of the ones, like the ones last night, they're in a closed booth. So they seal the crowd noise out. They don't have to have the big headphones. But if it's an open air announcer booth, they have to be able to like completely block out their ears so they can hear the broadcast.
You're telling me the noise. AirPods are noise canceling. It's fantastic. You're telling me we have to use a headphone with an attached microphone that looks like it's, from a variety show from the 1940s? It looks like what they introduced the Ed Sullivan Show with.
I'm just saying, I think that CBS is doing it because they have to, and it's the best for their broadcast.
I refuse to believe that technology doesn't exist to pare those bad boys down. They are ridiculous. I mean, they're the biggest headphones with an attached, a goofy attached mic to it. You guys aren't with me on this?
Jesse, I'm mostly just getting whiplash from you being like so anti the edgiest headphones out there with AirPods, but not like not being into the dated, like I'm trying to gauge where we're at digitally for you. What year are you living in?
2008. He's living in 2008 to 9 technology wise. He's like, that was the sweet spot for him. And he just stayed there.
You and your iPod Nano holding
things
strong,
were working
I'm sure.
great. Things working great, before we had to unlock things with our faces and biometric. You didn't have passwords on stuff back then. You just turn it on. Very unsecure time. But people's data and identities getting stolen right and left. But I tell you what, there's no two-factor authentication back then. You just log on, baby. You're freewheeling, but very convenient. Very insecure.
Very insecure, but very convenient. It's true. Well, we have a great show coming up. We talked to one of our favorite pastors. Judah Smith joins us. Emily, you just had that convo like minutes ago, didn't you?
I did, yes.
You want to tease it at all for the listener?
No, it was great. I mean, it's always great talking to Judah. We actually talked about mental health and faith, which I will say he said some things that I've never heard a pastor say about mental health in a very good way. Let me tease this in a positive way.
Yeah, you have to be very clear. I've never heard a pastor say something like this about mental health.
Yeah, in a good way. And in a way that it's like, I've been waiting for someone to say this. So it was a good conversation.
Judah is very progressive when it comes to his adoption. His pants and hairstyle, but also his adoption of technology. That's why I think it's time for him to zag. And what I mean by that is when he's preaching, I don't know what his mic deal is. I'm sure he doesn't have the little flesh color. He might be a handheld guy.
No, that's his thing, dude. He is an old school handheld because he uses it for dramatic emphasis. He'll like come up real close and and then he'll run and he'll like make a big emphatic point as he walks, and he pulls that mic down to his waist. Like if you watch him, like I don't know how his sound guys are back there in a cold sweat the entire sermon, just trying to like keep the knobs up and down to match where Judah has his microphone in relation to his mouth, because he swings this thing like a saber. I mean, it's crazy.
It's like Sebastian Maniscalco. What's that guy's name? The comedian, that Italian guy.
Yeah.
He's always, and he's doing the sound effects.
An impression. Yeah.
He's doing the sound effects. He's whipping it around. It's kind of that kind of vibe. But here's what I'm saying for Judah. Time to zag. Time to go CBS broadcaster booth. I want to see you preach. I want to see you preach on that. Like you're locked in because you're getting no outside noise blocking everything out. You got that big gumball. Your hand's free. You don't have to fumble with a mic. Get him a blazer. Get him a blazer too.
But if he has that on, he won't know if people are saying amen or whatever. Like
that's the thing. It's a whole sermon illustration that you don't do this for the feedback of man. You are beholden to the message. And
do you ever do online church, like your church?
Yeah.
Okay. So same. So my church locally, it's a very energetic church. I would say there's a lot of feedback during the sermon and stuff like that, but their live stream, they don't have a room mic. And so you don't hear any reaction. It's like watching The Big Bang Theory without a laugh track.
Yeah.
It is a completely different experience listening to a sermon that normally has a lot of feedback. Stone silence. It's so uncomfortable. I've literally emailed the church, hey, y'all should just turn a mic on in the back of the room. Just like one mic, please. But
listen, there's a lot of situations that could benefit from a room. It's like watching a press conference. I know, sorry, I'm going heavy on the sports stuff, but we just watched Super Bowl. When it's like the Patrick Mahomes coming to the mic and like you can hear that a question is being asked, but you have no idea what it is. And then he just, that was the 3-4 defense there. And it's like, well, how is this help? They can't get a room mic so I can hear what the question being asked these guys are. Like, we're just sitting there and we're trying to read the facial expression. Like, did that reporter say something offensive to him? How's he? We're only here at half the press conference. You can't get one mic in there, I'm
with you. I mean, like watching an NBA game, I love like listening to the crowd noise. You can hear a little heckling. You could, like it adds something. I agree. And that's why I want my church to have one so I can hear the heckling,
Here's the downside. I know we've got a lot to get to.
Not really.
But here's the downside of that is like the old live before a studio audience sitcoms, Yeah. And there's still probably some sitcoms with laugh tracks. I think probably CBS shows do laugh tracks. You ever watch an episode? And now I'm sure it's all digital and AI and fake laughs or whatever. But back in the day, they would do it for studio audience. You ever watch one and there's one person in there that was just way too into it? And his laugh, it's the ha-ha guy. It's like, whoa. Well, it was funny. Okay, it was funny, but it wasn't that funny, like, or their laugh like starts a little too early, know, like, and it's just distracting the whole show. That's what you risk in a church setting is you get the one overly enthusiastic, you get straight,
or you get the baby, or you get the, I get it, but I still.
Wait, I do want to know, what other things have you emailed your church about?
Just that, literally only that. That is the only, because I was watching it on YouTube. And so I just, I had the, computer up. So I just fired up an email real quick. Just FYI.
I think having worked in a church in college, like I'm always fascinated by the things that people would email to the churches. Like I remember there was like a woman who emailed that the coffee was too hot that we served in like the church lobby.
There's a good solution to that. Just hold on to it for a minute before you drink it.
Yeah. I was like, ma'am, I don't know what to tell you. Blow on it. Like, I can't solve every problem here.
I wasn't complaining, by the way. I was offering constructive feedback to help the other viewer experiences. That's all. I wasn't complaining.
Put in the subject line, not a complaint, but
just a helpful suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway,
that's what everyone always says.
It's fair.
All right. And at the end of the show, we have your feedbacks, but stay tuned right now. After this break, it's Slices. Okay, it's time for
Slices.
What do you have, Jesse?
I'm really curious about your guys' take on this. It's a story that the Church of England has made the official decision to have the elements of communion cannot be gluten-free and cannot be alcohol-free. It was a whole hubbub where they said they were going to make concessions and offer gluten-free and alcohol-free options for people who have gluten intolerance or don't want to drink alcohol. And they've shut it out. They said there's only the gluten and there's only alcohol, right? That's it. That's all they're doing. And this was a big deal in the Church of England. I thought this was really interesting. Part of me is like, I guess it's cool they're sticking to their guts on it. I mean, I don't have a gluten intolerance. And, I don't mind a little sip of church wine in the morning.
In the morning?
Oh, what else are you doing? Communion?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But it also made me think about like the profound difference. Like I'm always been curious. I grew up Protestant. You guys all, none of us grew up Catholic, right? And there seemed to be significant differences between obviously Protestantism and Catholicism, but a lot of them in my mind kind of boiled down to like ceremonial type of things. Like their worship service was structured in kind of a different way, and it was much more formal. But one of the most interesting things that I would think about a lot is their idea of communion is so different than the Protestant one in that like for Protestants, and I can't speak for all, but especially in like a evangelical or non-denominational setting, it's relative. It's pretty much just symbolic, right?
It's like a remembrance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the elements themselves, I mean, look, they come in little prepackaged, depending on the church, you can little prepackaged cups, like little plastic clear Dixie cups or whatever. It doesn't seem all that reverential. I mean, different churches do it different ways, right? But to your point, Cameron, it is just a remembrance. There isn't actual significance to the sacraments themselves. But Catholics, their theology is, what's it, transubstantiation? I'm butchering that.
Nailed it.
Close enough, Catholic friends. That the Eucharist, it actually becomes the body and blood of Christ, in like when you consume it.
The aftertaste is disgusting.
But I mean, and I respect that they believe something mystical and supernatural, a literal miracle is occurring when you consume the elements. Now, I'm assuming that's why they have the restrictions on gluten and alcohol, like that they got to keep the ingredients.
Church of England is Protestant. The Church of England.
Is it?
Yeah. So Catholic is Catholic, and
was Anglican.
Anglican.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Then why do they? My whole take was, I think it's I think it's cool because they believe this miraculous thing is happening.
I was wondering why you're leaning into the Catholics so hard.
Yeah,
because I honestly, that's one thing I would say. Like, I wouldn't say I'm envious about their theology but I respect. I don't fully understand it, but I think that's a profound thing to believe happens, right? And I think that degree of faith is cool. I don't know why we're talking about the Anglicans. Why couldn't they make a concession? This whole time I was thinking, this sounds just like they're being a little legalistic about the gluten thing. You know,
we wrote this up on the site, and I think the final sentence was like, "So if you have a dietary restriction and you can't be a member of the Church of England anymore, go check out the Presbyterians or somebody who's a little more loose."
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's just them. Emily and I got talking about this because like, communion when I grew up is exactly what you talked about. I went to Assembly of God Church once a month.
Yeah.
We would pass the tray, the little shot glass of grape juice, the little wafer thing, not the big circle one, but like a little square crackery thing. And it was a part of our Sunday service. And I'm realizing, I go to a non-denom church now. I can't think of the last time we took communion on Sunday. I think they do it on the Wednesday night service, which I don't go to because it's too far. But like, I'm really trying to think, and like going back to COVID and stuff. I think the last time I had communion at church would have been 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, that shocks me because it's like, there's a lot of traditions of our childhood church experience, the 2-hour plus service times, they'd sing a special song during the offering, things like that. My church doesn't even take up an offering. You just do it on an app, they'll put a sign, whatever. But it's like, there's so many things that have just evolved as this generation of pastors has kind of come into place. I mean, praying before your meal. I mean, it was like every single meal when I was growing up, and I don't pray before my meals that often. It's not that I'm ungrateful. I just, I kind of like, as an adult, I kind of realized it was just kind of like a spiritual obligation. Yeah. It was a tradition more than it was like a heart thing. And I'm like, I'm going to shed dead religion, and I'm going to be sincere in my talk when I talk to God, that kind of thing. Anyway, I kind of think that communion, the emphasis of communion in non-denom Protestant churches, kind of fell into that category of like, well, yeah, it's good, but we don't need to do it that much. But it's like, no, Jesus actually commanded us to regularly do this in remembrance of him. Yeah. And it's like, I miss it, like Emily, I know your church takes it on Sunday fairly regularly.
Yeah. I think we do it once a month, but like, honestly, like it's not enough of a pattern that I'm like, okay, every first Sunday of the month we're doing it. And maybe it is, and I'm just not picking up on it, but it's every few weeks, and I don't really know how they decide when we're not doing it. Yeah. But I agree. Like, I grew up in a church where we did it every single week, and it is interesting because it got to a point where I was like, it did lose almost like the importance of it. Yeah, because we were doing it every week, but
it's like a snack time.
Yeah. I think that also was partly my like spiritual immaturity of like not really understanding the fullness of what we were doing. But yeah, I'm interested with the Church of England, how people in the church, if they care that much about the gluten part of it, like what their response to this is.
So several churches ago, for 5 years, I went to a church that was a bunch of former Baptists, like they wanted the church to be, theologically it was Baptist, but it was non-denom. Great teaching, terrible worship. Church? No, it was just a church, but it was like terrible worship, but great teaching. I went for the teaching, and I would show up late. And I remember when they did, but they would like dabble with like artsy fartsy liturgical stuff. Yeah. Like, cause it was like a young pastor, young leadership team. And so they would like do the liturgical, like communion stations where you would walk up to a pastor who would then like give you the sacrament kind of a thing, which again, growing up, you just passed the tray. Wow. So, but I remember they were like, there's pastors stationed throughout the perimeter of the auditorium. And if you're gluten-free and non-alcoholic, you can go over to Greg. And all the other ones are like all gluten and alcohol.
Boring old Greg. Yeah.
Yeah, Greg had the longest line because there's a lot of Baptists who didn't want to drink the wine, but they thought it was edgy to do the wine for communion, like a lot of Baptist churches don't. So that was their thing. But anyway, I remember that there's a gluten-free station. And I was just like, I'm not laughing at people who have celiac disease, but I'm just like, I thought that was odd at the time. But it's interesting now that it's, I guess the churches of England is putting their foot down. I don't know.
But I will say the sort of, and I don't even want to call it a backlash. I think it was more of just like a combination of social trend and organic spiritual movements in different demographics where there was a movement away from liturgical elements and an informalization of what the actual process of going to church is, but I still think there's something very cool about liturgical traditions and very kind of a ritualistic approach to worship that may not that is timeless. And there's something cool that you're taking part in a tradition that has been that believers have been doing the exact same way for maybe hundreds of years. So if you go back in time,
the rhythms of spiritual practice throughout the seasons of the year, I think is really compelling. And I agree with you. I think that it's like the pendulum has swung almost too far, leaving that kind of foundational stuff. And maybe that's why there's so many Christians now are so feelings led, and Emily, you and I talk about like new believers launching podcasts, and it's all about feelings and feelings and feelings. And it's just like, oh boy, they have no spiritual foundation. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't even know why they believe what they believe half the time. They just know that they feel Jesus in their hearts and they are excited to tell people about it, which is great, but yikes also. So
yeah, well, I mean, even thinking about like when I grew up doing communion because I knew I was supposed to, but like my feelings behind it were just so immature because I didn't understand. And then as I've grown in maturity and my relationship with God's changed, I genuinely enjoy doing communion now because I understand it not just on like a knowledge level, like I understand it on a deeper way.
So you're saying you're better than us. I get it.
Yeah, that's how I interpreted that.
I'll let you say that I'm better than you.
The other, and I feel like we've lost a lot of cool stuff. I think the idea behind like the rosary, I think is really cool. It's a physical item that you carry with you, right? That you can wear, that each bead is a reminder of a different spiritual principle. And as you kind of go, different days are associated with different beads. And it's basically something that is a memory tool to help you remember spiritual principles and to incorporate them into your prayer. And if they're cool, like, oh man, why'd we throw that one out? That'd be pretty cool to have your own, I don't know. I do think that there was some degree of overcorrection there when it came to kind of shedding legalistic stuff. I think a lot of cool stuff was lost,
Well, and now the Anglicans, they're just turning their back on all the people with celiac disease.
Yeah, they're out of there. They're out. Goodness. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. What do you have, Emily?
Okay, I came across this article talking about this new AI called Pickle AI. And before I tell you what it does, what would you assume something called Pickle AI does for you?
It will help you pick the perfect pickle.
Jesse, any guesses?
I do like that there would potentially be an artificial intelligence that was very concerned that someone invented it just because it was so burdensome to decide on what pickle you wanted to eat. I do like Cameron's idea.
Or maybe how to pickle the perfect pickle. Maybe it's like it looks at your jars and your ingredients and it helps you come up with the perfect pickle recipe.
What I think it is? I think it's one when you're in a pickle and you're like, I don't know what to do here. And
how to get out of your pickles.
Yeah. Like I told you about I think I gave this anecdote a while back that at an old Sears near me, okay, big storefront Sears, got changed to a place called Decisions, okay, and I didn't know what they did, but I assumed you would just go in and be like, all right, people sitting at desk and you just walk up like, all right, here's the deal. I got this job offer, right? And you just lay it out and they kind of help you walk you through it.
I think it's called therapy, but yeah.
But I think pickle is something that if you're in a pickle, you consult this AI and it'll tell you how to get out of it.
Actually, that's not a bad idea for an AI. What is it, Emily?
So in a way, Jesse's kind of close. The whole purpose of Pickle AI is it will create a body double image of you that will appear on camera on a Zoom call so that you don't have to actually be on the Zoom call.
Wait, like it's a living and breathing, moving situation, or it's like a photo? Because we have photos.
So what you do is you submit a video, like a 5-minute video of yourself talking to this AI. And after a few days, it creates this avatar of you that will appear on a Zoom call, will move. And what you do is you call in. So like you're still having to like listen in on the Zoom call, but you don't have to appear on screen. So you could actually be sitting or like laying in bed or something. But you turn on your Pickle AI camera and your coworkers will be convinced that you are sitting attentively at your desk.
So this is just for people who have an aversion to turning their camera on.
Correct.
Yes.
I guess. I mean, it seems like kind of a hack.
Well, it's a work from home. I think it's a work from home thing, right? So you didn't shower today. You got crazy bedhead, but you have a client meeting at 11. You don't want to have to.
How hard is it?
Doll yourself up for one meeting, so you just do a pickle. I get it.
But has it come to that? Has it that we that our disassociation with in-person professional contact is so much so that we don't even want to look at the person, and we have to have a robot, a replica of ourselves because
that's how rewired everybody is now.
Now I do sound like I'm living in 2008. I'm sorry, it's gone too far.
See, okay, I will say this technology does feel 5 years too late. Like when we were all like, looking our roughest in like COVID work from home, totally get the concept of like having a robot AI on there for us. But now, it's like, if you can't bother to turn on your camera now, that's a you problem. Or just say, hey, I'm not turning on my camera. Yeah,
it does seem unnecessary. Is it free? Because if anybody pays for this, that's crazy.
Ooh, it is not free.
Are you serious?
It's $25 a month.
Oh my goodness.
Well, but the other thing too is how good could it possibly be? Like, because it'd be pretty embarrassing getting caught pickling, like, okay, if it's like a little glitchy or the sound catches up or it's like, there's sort of that uncanny valley where it's like that. Yeah.
Well, see, I think they're kind of banking though on like, cause sometimes like video will be delayed or something. So I think they're kind of just saying like, you can use that as an excuse if it's not actually lined up.
But the uncanny valley thing is dead on. That to me is like how you can tell AI. It's like there's something in the eyes. It's the way the mouth moves. Yes, it'll improve for sure. But when we were up in New York last week, there was like an info kiosk and it had like a person greet you. It was an AI avatar person, and it was like, hello. And it could like speak in any language or whatever the guests were. And it was just like, this is clearly not a human. I mean, this is like, they're not fooling anybody.
Yeah. Ted, you're not at home today working, are you? You're at the beach, aren't you? I can tell by your 8-fingered pickle that is trying to fake it on Zoom. That, you know what I mean? Like,
and he's got his big old headphones and his air controller mic, and he's at the beach trying to block the noise.
I want to know, like, can I change is it like an avatar? Like, can I change the clothing, the hairstyle? Because it's like, if I'm showing up in these same, to these meetings or something.
For $25 a month, they better have a whole wardrobe. Like
I can get the best. There isn't a streaming service out there that costs $25. Like, a month.
I think Netflix does actually, but
either way,
27 for ad free now.
Is it 27?
It's insane. I canceled it out of spite. I was so mad that they because I do ad free on everything, and it's like it was $27. I was like, I don't watch Netflix enough because I have all the other ones to justify $27 a month. So I canceled it, and then I'll do it later. Like I've decided with Netflix, if you're gonna charge me $27, I'll do 1 month of you, watch everything I'm interested in, and turn you off for 3 or 4 months, and then come back.
I will say I do the ad supported version of Peacock. Because I
do ad free on Peacock. I love Peacock.
I do too. And I got it because they had that one football game last year, and the only way to watch it was get Peacock. And I was like, well, into this right after the game. And then you're like, oh, we kind of got some good stuff on here. But I got the cheapest version out of principle.
Yeah.
I don't mind the ads. The only here's my big complaint is it's like 4 ads in rotation, and Jennifer Gardner's on like 3 of the 4. Right? She's doing every ad now. You know, it's like I'm watching Modern Fam. You get a little Jennifer Gardner. We're back to the show, but it has a little clock in the corner. So it's like, oh, I'm going to go, get some chips or whatever. Yeah. I don't mind it,
I the same with the Magic app, FanDuel Sports app. They have commercial breaks, obviously, because of the broadcast. Yeah. And it's the same 3 ads every time. It's just like by the end of the season, I want to shoot the TV. Yeah. Last year, do you remember that no flex zone, the wing stop or whatever? It was like, no flex zone. Every commercial break during a basketball game. Played that commercial. It was awful.
Made me actively dislike Wingstop. Like,
I have not eaten there since out of spite. Yeah. You think I can't hold a grudge? I will never go to Wingstop again because of that ad. Yeah. So
it was bad.
All right. Well, that'll do it for Slices. There's a lot more where that came from. Go check out relevantmagazine.com, where we are covering stuff like this at the intersection of faith and culture every day. Thanks. All right. Stay tuned. Up next, Judah Smith joins us. Well, our guest today is Judah Smith. You know him. He's the pastor of a church home out in Seattle and LA. He spent years exploring the connection between faith and mental well-being. And that's what Emily talks to him about. They talk about why mental health was a crucial part of Jesus's ministry, how the church can do better in addressing it, and what it actually looks like to care for our souls in today's world. Here's our conversation with Judah Smith.
Well, it's so nice to talk to you. And before we get started, I just want to check in and see how you're doing. I know this last month you and Church Home have been dealing with the LA fires. So are you guys doing okay?
Thank you. It's a surreal moment, right? In time and history, you realize that it's not very often that you get to be in a moment, whether good, bad, or ugly, that generations will never forget. And I hope something like this never happens again, certainly in our lifetime or many lifetimes. And it's just hard to fathom. January 7th, I saw the smoke starting to billow in the hills, and it was just a pretty you're always concerned a little bit, but it's not something that hadn't happened before in our time in LA. And before you knew it, it's it's all over. It seemed to be affecting every aspect of the city. And so it's difficult. It's just, there's not anyone that I know here in LA that doesn't know somebody and care about somebody who has been absolutely directly affected. And now, the effect will be felt for probably decades, right? So it's hard to even fathom. I have friends whose homes were saved, but now they look like they're on set for an apocalyptic movie. And so they're living every morning, having their coffee in their backyard, staring at, decimation or devastation, so it's such a surreal moment. But grateful for partners like Convoy of Hope and the Dream Center. I mean, both of those orgs just deserve so much gratitude. They were on the ground as the fires began. I mean, it was just extraordinary to see what they did to care for humans. So thank you for your thoughts and prayers. And we love this city, and it's going to take a long time to heal, but we keep moving.
I'm so glad to hear that you've got, people and organizations to help you deal, especially with those physical needs. But I know this has been a hard toll on everyone emotionally. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, is dealing with mental health challenges, especially in difficult seasons. You've always been really outspoken about how your faith has impacted your own mental health journey. And I'm curious, how has your understanding of faith and mental health changed over the years?
Oh, wow. What an important question, and honestly meaningful question. I'm reminded of that little verse towards the end of the back of the Bible. I think it's 3 John, something like that. One of the third books, 3 Peter, 3 John, whatever. And it's like, brothers and sisters, I wish that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Right. So it's this, I think it's Peter, actually. I think Peter is saying, like, I want you to prosper in your soul. So he seems to be emphasizing that wealth, you're only as wealthy as you are in your soul. You're only as wealthy. Like, we monitor wealth in such practical, tangible terms, which I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just what we do here in linear time and space. But like, I think real wealth is in your soul, and you can't buy it, can you? You can't trade for it. You can't like trade stocks and get soul wealth. It's something that you do have to invest in. It's something that you have to want. And I think that has everything to do with the health and wealth of your brain and your soul, perhaps even your gut. To be honest, I mean, we know that now is the second brain, and as your gut goes and how your gut communicates to your brain, you basically got two brains. Like, this is just stuff I've learned in gut health and brain health, and things that I think we thought, oh, Jesus doesn't care about your brain, Jesus doesn't care about your gut, Jesus doesn't care, when it's like, actually he cares deeply about it. And I see Jesus interacting with people. You remember that scene with Mary and Martha? Jesus goes over to spend some time with Mary and Martha in their home. That in and of itself was kind of controversial, but he Martha's in the kitchen and Mary's, in the living room with Jesus, basically. And, Martha comes in, is like, yo, I'm fixing food here. Can you tell Mary to come help me? And Jesus goes, oh, Martha, I see that you're troubled and anxious and worried about so many things. Well, he's not talking about her countenance. He's not talking about her to-do list that day. He's saying to Martha, you're really troubled in your brain and your soul. You're anxious. Your brain health, your mental health you're tormented. And he says to her, what you need to do is not fix food. Just come sit with me. Just be present. Take an exhale. Build in some margin. Sit down next to Mary. And let's tell stories and let's talk and let's connect. So to say it plainly, Emily, mental health, that in so many ways is part of the spine, the vertebrae of the way of Jesus. Like, I think I don't think it's a ligament, a muscle, a limb. I think it's part of the vertebrae. I think it's part of the absolute substructure of our entire belief system. The overwhelming emphasis is the soul. It's the soul. Growing up in church, they say preachers are soul winners. Think about that statement, as antiquated and bizarre as that might sound, as if anyone can save a soul. Only God can do that. But like, yeah, we're here for the soul of humanity. Like, man, haircuts and cool clothes and all that stuff, man, I believe in it. People need water and housing. And I mean, come on, we're all in it. But not for a second does that compete or compare with the absolute emphasis and value of the condition of people's inner life and their brains and their thoughts about themselves and their feelings and their soul, about their worth and their validity and their purpose and their meaning. Mental health is the message of Jesus. The state of the thoughts you think about yourself there's a scripture, I think it's in the Psalms, Emily, where it seems like exaggeration, but I'm not sure exaggeration's allowed in the canon in sacred scripture. But it says, like, God's thoughts towards us are more than the granules of sand on all the oceans and seas in the world. Which is to say, God's thoughts towards us cannot be counted. They're limitless. God has mental health, and it's perfect. And he has thoughts of beauty and love and compassion and empathy towards us relentlessly and endlessly, and in a way you cannot number. So he wants to share that thought life with us. I did not come on here to promote a book, but I'm coming out with a book called Bad Thoughts with one of my therapists. And it's about these toxic thoughts we're thinking and how to overcome them. And I try to inspire people in the book, but it's really my therapist doing all the back work and the research and the science behind how can we help people with bad thoughts? Because mental health really in a lot of ways sometimes comes down to bad thoughts. Now, why we have those bad thoughts is way beyond my pay grade and the philosophy and the study. I haven't given my life to that, but I'm passionate about the way of Jesus and how it completely coincides with thinking beautiful, wonderful thoughts about our world, about ourselves, about our God, about our neighborhood, our community, and those even not like us. So I can't imagine separating the two. And yet we have, haven't we? We've separated the message of Jesus and mental health. And I think they are in so many ways one of the same.
You mentioned that you have a therapist and friends that you turn to whenever you're struggling with mental health. What are some other spiritual disciplines or practices that have helped you get a handle on your mental health?
Honestly, I would answer that because I'm a preacher by a text and a passage, and Jesus says, are you, Matthew 29:11 or something. I think it's kind of like a big moment, right? And he says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come with me, get away with me, and I'll show you how to take a real rest. That is something I endeavor to do daily. To get away with him. Growing up, Emily, we called it your devotions. Growing up, we called it prayer time, and we literally timed our prayer time. And we, Bible time, 3 in the old, 2 in the new. And I think all that's wonderful. And if that works for people, like my wife, it kind of works for her, like her daily Bible reading plan. That daily Bible reading plan was the death of the romance I had with Jesus. Timing my prayer time was the death of the relational reality of Jesus. It was like it became a thing I had to do. What I endeavor to do every day is to get away with him and take a real rest. And rest for me doesn't sound like I have to read this much, or I have to say this much, or I have to pray this long. It's usually a bathtub. I don't mean to be so descriptive, but I didn't take one this morning because I had to get up early and get in an Uber. But I usually take a bath and listen to a guided prayer. Sometimes it's me guiding myself, which is very bizarre and ironic. And I just get quiet and I just enjoy the quietness. And I think about Jesus. Sometimes scriptures come to mind. Sometimes distractions come to mind. Sometimes sports comes to mind. Sometimes food comes to mind. Sometimes nothing comes to mind. And women have a hard time believing this, that as guys, we can actually be thinking about nothing. All the research shows that women have a hard time understanding that guys actually have a nothing space that they get into, which, if for no other reason, that is the reason I'm grateful that I'm a guy, because I need that nothing space so bad. And I'll do that. And he meets me sometimes in ways I can't even describe, like cataclysmic, life altering. And then some days I think it's just the nice bath water. And I think that was good. I don't know. But I loved what Brother Lawrence said in practicing the presence of God. Whatever you get from God on each given day must be what you need from him. And sometimes it's silence, and sometimes it's nothing. And sometimes that's beautiful. So my practice is very special to me. It's very much for me. I don't do it so that I can tell people I do it. I did that for years. I had a timed prayer time. I had an amount of Bible that I could share in a sermon that really impressed people. And then I realized that it only impressed people. It didn't serve me or help me. That actually the way God made me was to just get open-ended space where I'm alone, close my eyes, and I'm with him and he's with me. And that's what works for me. And that's the way God made me. And I'm not ashamed of it like I used to be. I used to be ashamed to tell people the amount of time I spent with God, because I thought it needed to be hours. I thought I needed to name every name before God. But now I get to, like, there's certain people I get pretty much every day to pray for because they're on my mind and heart and I live life with them. But then there are other people God just brings me to my mind, and I get to say, God, be with my friend who lives in New York. Be with my friend who lives in Miami. Be with my friend who lives in Brazil. Be with my friend in Japan today. And then I get to text them and be like, yo, you were on my heart today, and I just prayed for you. And I also get to text people and say I pray for them and not lie anymore. I used to lie a lot, Emily, and tell people I was praying for them, but I don't remember ever praying for them. It was just a text I sent because I was a preacher and a pastor praying for you. But that just meant that I was saying hi, but it was a lie. So I'm minimizing the lying about my praying for people now. I do my best to, like, by the way, my little trick, if you feel like you've been lying, telling people you're praying for them, I usually, if I feel like I might forget while I'm texting praying for you, I'll literally say a prayer right then. Because I just got tired, dude. I got tired of being like, my daily discipline was like, sometimes it just wasn't real. And I was using it to tell people stuff. And, so true transparency. My daily discipline that is the most sacred to me is to get away with him and get quiet and just be there. And I love it. And I'll have one worship song that I'm obsessed with, and I'll listen to it for almost a year straight. So last year it was Carrie Job did a collab with Martin Smith, and Martin redid his song Obsession. And I love Carrie and Martin personally. They're wonderful people. And I listened to Obsession live from Europe. Probably, I don't want to say thousands of times, but I think it was thousands of times. And now it's Chandler Moore's What I Needed live from LA. Which, by the way, Chandler, if you're out there, why did you record in LA and not invite me to the recording? I thought we were friends, and that was weird because you were live in LA and I didn't even know you were live in LA. But anyways, that's beside the point. So I just get one worship song and I listen to it all year, almost every day. It's incessant, but that's what works for me. And I just think it's whatever like really connects you, with God. That's, some people go on walks and look for birds. My dad was a bird watcher, and when he watched birds, he felt God. And that was his thing. So I just think it's exciting to let your relationship with Jesus be really uniquely yours.
That was Judah Smith. Do yourself a favor, follow him on all the socials and check out what they're doing over at Church Home. It's a pretty great app, actually. All right, stay tuned. After this break, it's your feedback. All right, it's time for your feedback. Last week, I had just gotten back from a spontaneous trip I took with Cohen up to New York because of Drew Holcomb. On this podcast, I was listening to Drew talk about their new album, Memory Bank, and how his dad growing up didn't buy the kids a lot of stuff, but they always took the kids on a trip every year or adventures. And the dad said that he was intentional, that he was investing in their memory bank. And that was formative. And I was inspired, took my kid on a trip that he was wanting to do. And it just got us talking about those kind of core memories, those things growing up that your parents did, your family did, that kind of have stuck with you over the years, something in your memory bank. You hit us up on X at Relevant Podcast, and here's a few of our favorites.
Oh, I don't know if this is a positive core memory, but I'll go ahead and read it. When I was a kid, my dad and I would go to Blockbuster every Friday night. He let me pick a movie. It was Flubber, and it was a very long time before I got to pick again. So your father was...
He got banned.
The one time you're like, all right, kiddo, pick one out. And he came back with Flubber. And the thing I like is like they went home and watched it. Apparently, it wasn't like the dad just had a hard stop there. Okay, He saw the case. And the great thing about that era, you're expecting the case. I can do I get a summary, a plot summary right on the back. Okay, I know what I'm getting into. Yeah. And he was so outraged by how bad Flubber was that he wouldn't let his poor kid pick again.
I kind of get where the dad's coming from. You're spending good money on that rental. We're not gonna run the risk of having a bad movie experience after that.
I don't know. Usually, movie rental, it's like you're kind of rolling the dice here, right? Like it seems like this was very personal with Flubber specifically. This wasn't like really fun.
Do you remember like any movies you rented specifically like that? This memory is burned into their brain of the night they let the whole family down with Flubber. You know what I mean? That's so
also,
funny.
I don't remember Flubber that well. Was it that bad?
It was Robin Williams was a wacky scientist.
No, I remember it, but like, was it that bad of a movie that you'd never be allowed to pick a movie again?
Maybe their family just has high standards.
Maybe it was just so mediocre. You know, I do have a formative.
We paid good. I work hard all week.
I don't want to watch Flubber.
I pay good money.
Robin Williams, he's overacting again. I got it. No, when I was 9, I looked it up. It was 1992. This movie came out. Reservoir Dogs, the ultra-violent Quentin Tarantino.
Did not.
No, listen. Me and my buddy rented a movie. I'm trying to remember what it was, but we were young, and we could. And the parents let us rent one. We opened the box when we got home. It was freaking Reservoir Dogs. A jackpot.
Jackpot.
We were like, "What is this?" And we watched that thing. And it was great. That was a formative.
I hope you were supposed to be getting like All Dogs Go to Heaven or something like that.
It was a pretty safe movie. It was like Angels in the Outfield or Rookie of the Year or something like that. And we got Reservoir Dogs instead. And we're like, oh, we did not know what we were in for. It's very formative. Awesome.
Very
memory.
formative. Yeah. All right. There's more. There's a lot here.
Lindsay Adams said, my dad took me to the same diner nearly every Sunday after church. I always got pancakes, and he always thought it was hilarious to tell the waiter she's got expensive taste. And I will say, I think my favorite thing about my dad, and I'm sure you guys do it as dads, is my dad's got about 4 jokes that he loves to keep in the rotation. And I do think that's a quality I've picked up, is I share the same jokes over and over again, and I forget who I've already told them to. So
did when the check came, did this dad also like open up and look at the bill and have a look on his face like, oh my gosh, and lean back in his chair? That's the other classic dad move. Yeah, you've made a mistake here.
I also like Ryan McNeil. He said, one time my dad took me to Chuck E. Cheese without my siblings, and he made me swear on my life to never tell them. That was 20 years ago, and I've kept the secret until now.
Well, I hope you swore in your life, Ryan. I hope Ryan doesn't drop dead right now for violating. That was a mistake.
Oh, this one's sad. Megan Hill said, Dad always woke me up early on Saturday mornings to run errands with him. I complained every time, but now I'd give anything for one more morning of driving around with just him, or with him, just us.
I get it. Sweet. That is sweet, Megan. But you're not wrong. No one wants to wake up early on a Saturday. That's your one day to sleep in, Dash.
I work hard all week. Yeah.
Whenever my dad
I tried to watch Flubber last night.
Yeah. I watched Flubber. You can go to Home Depot with me. All right. I watched that terrible Robin Williams. He's the same character in every movie.
Dad really, really hates Flubber. I love it.
He just missed Outfire in a lab coat. What are we doing?
The CG wasn't even good. The Flubber's not that bouncy.
Whenever my dad dropped me off at school, he'd roll down the window and yell, make good choices. He thought it was funny. I thought it was humiliating. Now I do this to my kids and realize he was right. Well, I'm glad you take on the tradition of humiliating your children, Jessica.
Wait, Jessica said that?
Yeah.
Oh, the last one. Yeah. Oh, wow. He would yell, make good choices? That's terrible.
Oh, my dad did that to us.
He would yell stuff to you as you walked away?
He would yell things like, love you, but like so loud, like right as we're like walking in and there's like a bunch of other kids walking in with us.
But did he do it because he was like being funny and teasing you and embarrassing you on purpose? Or was he oblivious to the fact that he was yelling something embarrassing?
Oh, he was incredibly aware that we would get embarrassed, and he did it often. Because I remember there was one time I think my brother was in front of me and my dad yelled it, and my brother and I both just like tensed up and we didn't turn around and we just kept walking inside.
I feel
some lunatic is just out in the yard yelling, I love you at the children.
Yeah.
I feel like
we're not going to acknowledge it.
I feel like you could make the make good choices things more humiliating by just adding this time after. Make good choices this time. I don't know what happened last time he dropped you off. Yeah.
He picked Flubber last time. That's
yeah. I'll tell you what happened. He brought Flubber home on Friday night. 20 minutes too long.
That's the big complaint. The runtime.
The final act could have been way more concise.
It's too much. It's too much. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, there's more where that came from. Those critiques could also be said of this podcast, FYI.
Yeah.
The final act is 20
Are
minutes
we
too
the
long.
Flubber of podcasts? Is that what you're trying to say?
Oh my gosh. We're overacting. That's for sure. The CG isn't all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
we'll make better choices next time.
We pickled ourselves for this whole episode. None of us even have our camera on. I'm curious, though. Flubber's catching a lot of shade here. I'm going to box office mojo this real quick. Is that site still around?
I don't know.
I'm sure there's an archive of the Flubber page.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Here, we're going to box office mojo. This is, okay, the budget for this film.
We got 24% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is that the critic score or the audience score?
That's critic score. 73% liked the movie.
Well, this is what matters. Okay. I can't find the budget, but I can't. Guess how much its worldwide gross was?
$12. I don't know. I think family comedy, late 90s. It was what, 97? I have no clue. I'm going to say 40 million in 90s money.
I'm going to go $100 million.
$177 million. It was domestic, a $92 million movie. Yeah. So you can throw all the shade of Flubber you want. It was cash cow at the box office. So,
dude, that's $350 million in today's money.
It would have been.
That doesn't even that's just inflation. That doesn't even factor in that movie tickets are significantly more expensive now.
Had Flubber been released this year, been one of the most successful
$500 million franchise.
One of the most successful movies of the decade. Flubber is what we're talking, adjusted for inflation.
Also, it's only 93 minutes. Like that is.
It is tight. It is. It's still 20 minutes too long, but it is tight.
Also, I did find it. Its budget was $80 million.
Really?
Okay, so doubled its budget. But how did they spend $80 million on Flubber?
I think the CGI.
The CGI got out of control. It's pretty complicated stuff back then.
It was very green. All the coloring took a long time.
No, it's shocking. It's actually pretty impressive because they only used natural effects in that movie. They had to invent Flubber for it, so that's where all the money went. That's real Flubber in the movie.
To R&D.
They had to, in order to have a film. They like I said, they needed the actual Flubber. So
that was in the era of practical effects. Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for last week's feedback. It's time for this week's
editorial question of the week.
All right. Well, we got talking about Flubber, and I got us thinking of movies from our childhoods that were very a big deal in your household. So maybe it was beloved. It was the movie you watched all the time, or maybe it was a scarring memory, like our Flubber friend who watched it one time and never again. But a movie that was a big deal to you. But then when you bring it up now to others, you're realizing that it wasn't a universal experience that everybody shared. It was more just a big deal to you. We want to know that story, what the movie was, and what it meant in your childhood. Hit us up on X at Relevant Podcast, and we'll read our favorites on next week's show.
I have two. I was shocked to find out later that Biodome, starring Pauly Shore and what Baldwin.
I don't think I've ever seen this movie.
No, it's the Bieber's father. Stephen Baldwin. It's Stephen Baldwin, Pauly Shore, where they volunteer to lock themselves in a biodome experiment. I thought that was just a massive hit. I thought all Pauly Shore movies were huge. I thought the whole world stopped on Pauly Shore, all of them. And I was surprised to find that he wasn't that big a deal to a lot of people. But in my household, he was like Will Ferrell, basically, with Pauly Shore.
Pauly Shore was?
Yeah.
Or Stephen Baldwin. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Here's another one. I've occasionally brought up the film Airheads, where a band comprised of Steve Buscemi, Brendan Fraser, and Adam Sandler have a hostile terrorist takeover of a rock station to try to get their single played. That wasn't another one that kind of flew under the radar. I thought everyone liked Airheads,
Again, I don't think I've seen either of those movies, but I'll add them to the list possibly.
Yeah, you're really
I think
out.
Mine was Napoleon Dynamite. I thought everyone agreed that was like the greatest movie ever made, and then I've brought it up so many times and people haven't even seen it, and it's actually
what are you talking about? Who hasn't seen Napoleon Dynamite?
A lot of people my age haven't seen it. Like I brought it up to a lot of friends, and they haven't seen.
I think
Early
it was.
I was in like 4th or 5th grade when it came out, and I watched my brother and I remember us watching it probably almost every day for like 2 months once we got it on DVD because we thought it was the peak of comedy.
2004. Yeah, I could
so
see
I would have
that.
been in 4th grade. And I'll say I've always had good taste. So I knew a classic when I saw it.
That movie was huge in like my friend. I mean indie comedy, deadpan. Yeah, it was a huge movie,
like,
but
else
maybe not
age.
in elementary school. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my brother and I were the only elementary school students who were obsessed with Napoleon Dynamite.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So hit us up. Let us know your movie and we'll read them next week. Many thanks to Judah Smith for joining us today. Make sure to follow him on all the socials. Check out what they're doing with Church Home. And we love when he comes on. It's always a great conversation. And also check the website, check relevantmagazine.com. We'll be running more of that conversation on the site today. So don't want to miss that. Also, make sure to check out issue 116 of Relevant. Nate Bargatze's on the cover. It's a stacked issue. You can read it for free at relevantmagazine.com. Just click on the magazine tab and all the other stuff. Sign up for our newsletter, get Relevant Plus, all the things. Okay. On that note, we'll wrap it. I'm Cameron Strang.
I'm Jesse Carey.
I'm Emily Brown.
We will see you on Friday. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Relevant Podcast. Check out our features, interviews, and news updates every day at relevantmagazine.com. And make sure to follow Relevant on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest. For more great podcasts, browse the shows on the Relevant Podcast Network, which you can find at our site. And while you're there, don't miss the all-new era of Relevant Magazine. A new issue releases every other month at relevantmagazine.com.
It's 20 minutes too long.
Relevant Podcast Network.